So, something I learned about when viewing your writing is the concept of racial gaslighting, which I feel like I had a vague idea of, but haven't confronted it head on until I read your infographic about it. So, can you explain what racial gaslighting is and maybe talk about how it can show up specifically in conversations about bodies?
Yeah, for sure. So, racial gaslighting specifically is when someone manipulates information to make a victim. So, in this case, it would be maybe a person living in a fat body or a person of color, making that person question their experience, question their memory, or question their everyday reality. So, a lot of times, people who do the gaslighting do it sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly. And it's really about avoiding taking accountability for benefiting from something that's harming me. And
Like,
so,
give me an example.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting. There are people who will say things like, when it comes to body size, you're not fat, you're beautiful. And it's like, well, I can actually be both. What you're really saying is you see fat as being something that's unattractive, right? And so you can't, in your mind, sort of see those two things as being complementary. There have been situations in years ago in previous work situations where, I can remember someone saying to me, I was leaving a job and going to work for a civil rights org, and they were like, civil rights? Like, what do you mean? What are you even talking about? Didn't we solve that a long time ago? You
Uh,
know, it's these kinds of things that happen. There are things that happen on social media a lot. I remember having, this visible conversation at social media with a Black girlfriend about something that had happened to me that I knew was about race. I know that because I'm a Black person living in America for long enough to know what that looks like. And this white woman that I know comes into the conversation and says, oh, that person didn't mean that. You can't just make these assumptions. And I was like, trust and believe.
Whoa.
I had to let her know. I was like, first of all, you weren't invited to this conversation. Second of all, don't ever undermine what my experience is as a person of color. And so those are the kinds of things. And very quickly she backed off, right? Deleted her comment because she realized, oh shit, like I'm gaslighting somebody. And it's deeply harmful. Yeah.
I can see that for sure. And I have to tell you, so with this podcast, I am the student. I have so much work to do in body acceptance and loving myself just the way I am. And I have to tell you, when I was doing all my research and reading your blog and just poring over everything that you've put out there, I get so triggered personally by the word fat. And
Mm.
I'm a bigger girl. So, like, all my whole life, I have been. And so definitely people would call me fat, but you say it with so much confidence. Like when I said, how do you identify? And one of the words is fat. I want to embrace that word. Can you help me with how you got there?
Yeah, the thing is, we live in a society that tells us very clearly that the worst thing you can be in the world is fat. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like we have girls who would rather have cancer than be fat. That's a fucking problem. So,
Huge.
right. So we live in a society that is all about diet culture. It's a huge industry. There's tremendous pressure that comes from the media. It comes from everywhere. And it practically demands that women be in thin bodies. We are told that if we are not thin, if we are not white, if we are not straight, if we are not young, that we are essentially somehow wrong. So if we are not working towards thinness or thin, then inherently something is wrong with us. We've been taught that beauty and that worthiness only comes in one specific size and one specific look, one notion of beauty. And that's harmful. I mean, as I mentioned to you, I started dieting around age 12. So, and I stopped dieting probably in my mid to late 30s. So this has been a long, long process, Amy. It was not like one day I woke up and was like, hey, I love myself. And I also want to say that I don't love myself or my body every day because I'm a human being. But what got me to this point was being absolutely exhausted with dieting, number one, tired of people talking about the latest diet they were on. I'm like, you being on a diet all the time is keeping you from focusing on real shit. And so it was many years of being in this community of people who were seeking body liberation and acceptance, and realizing that fat only has meaning because we give it meaning. Like if you just
Yes.
say fat and thin, right? They don't have to hold weight, right? Pun intended.
Right.
They're just two things. That's all they are. They're descriptors. But it's like that additional meaning that we assign to it in our society. Fat means unattractive. It means lazy. It means something's wrong with you. And so
Right.
to claim the word fat is deeply empowering for me. And some people
Oh,
will say, I'm
yeah.
not fat. And that's okay. Like each person has to come to that space on their own. I don't know if that's
It,
helpful. Yeah.
it's very helpful. I love that. I agree. It would be so empowering for me if I claim that word. And two, I love that you said it didn't happen overnight. So I'm a work in progress. I can get there for sure.